Most businesses only focus on growing and expanding, and they give little to no attention to their exit strategies until after exit is staring them in the face. Learn here at Boosting Business Value, brought to you by Blue Sky Business Resources. You'll discover how to shape a more durable and saleable business, and how to implement a powerful, well-planned, and rewarding exit. Join Dr. David Gruder and Jason Tuzinkewich as they deliver actionable tips for lower middle market company owners, executives, and their trusted advisors. Find out where your business currently stands, how you can meet your revenue objectives more reliably, and how to grow your venture to the next level, all with a smooth and fruitful exit in mind. Here are your hosts, Dr. David and Jason.
Well, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to explore the process of shifting your leadership team's paradigm from a conventional strategic paradigm to an exit-minded paradigm. And for those of you who are new to this Boosting Business Value podcast, I'm David Gruder, the business lifecycle exit planning and post-acquisition psychologist for Blue Sky Business Resources. And with me, as ever, is the illustrious, articulate, brilliant, and a lot of other expletives co-host, Jason Tuzinkewich, Blue Sky's Chief Operations Officer. Take it away, Jason.
Wow, how do I follow that? In this podcast, I think the most important thing to start with is defining this exit-minded strategic focus that we're going to be shifting into. In order to do that, I think it's good to set the parameters of what are we talking about when we say conventional strategic focus, that we can then contrast it with what we're talking about in the podcast exit-minded strategic focus.
Indeed so.
Why don't you hit us up with the first stage of the conventional focus?
Yeah. Even before conventional strategic focus, most businesses aren't even at that level. They're chasing dreams or they're putting out fires. The typical business, no matter how much the owner and the team aspire to be doing something other than chasing dreams or putting out fires, that's what they end up spending an awful lot of time and energy on, is chasing opportunities to make the dream happen and putting out fires that happen that they hoped wouldn't happen, but that inevitably arise. The management style ends up being management by crisis, even though that's not what they intend. But that's kind of like pre-conventional focus.
That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, if you think about how most entrepreneurs get into starting a business, it's not that they are strategic thinkers and they need a product to articulate their strategic vision. It's that they're technical experts, they're operational experts. They know that they can either fill a need better than anything that's out there or improve upon something in a way that current manufacturers or current businesses aren't doing. They're so centric on the mindset of this product that strategy is kind of a rear view window thing. It's something they know is important, but it's not something that typically is in their comfort zone to make it a priority in a lot of these cases.
And some are visionaries that really don't understand the process of translating a vision, a dream, an idea, innovation, and invention into something that becomes a viable business.
Great point. If you're one of those business owners and you're thinking, yeah, I pretty much don't strategically plan, that's me. Don't be ashamed. You're in great company, but we can help you elevate your game by starting to act, behave, and think in a more strategic fashion. And quite frankly, that's what the leadership team is there for, is to help round out your excellence and drive the business forward in a more professional way. With all of that said, I'm going to start talking about conventional strategic planning. The way that conventional strategic planning typically works is starting with the perfect vision. You know where you want to go and you assume you're going to get there. And you take that perfect vision and you just walk backwards. Okay, if I'm going to get there in 10 years, what do I have to do in the next 3 years to be moving in the right direction? And assume success. And then you back that forward and you'll get to 1 year, you'll get to your quarter. But every stage of the way, it's What do I need to do knowing that I'm going to succeed? This is the point where I always like to bring up my good friend, Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And strategic planning is the same way. And that's what the vast majority of businesses who do strategic planning focus on. Now, there is another level of strategic planning excellence in the conventional focus arena, which is you make that perfect plan. And then before you start to implement it, you do a pre-mortem on it and say, okay, assuming it went bad, what happened? What got in the way? The thing that I get worried about with this pre-mortem mentality, I mean, it has a place, it has a use, and it's always good to be thinking about that failure. But if you do it after you've already committed to your perfect plan, then you're not going to see all of the barriers, all of the hurdles, and all of the walls because you've emotionally and mentally invested in your perfect plan. What we're going to talk about, the exit-minded strategic focus, and we'll get into this, but we're going to be looking at risk first. And it's just a different way of thinking. And the tools of exit-mindedness will help you get into that risk first thinking to build a perfect variable plan.
Well said. And before we turn our attention to contrasting the conventional focus with the exit-minded focus, one last comment, which is about really the biggest conventional strategic focus blind spot that there is, at least that you and I know about, Jason, and that's not building appropriate drift prevention KPIs, key performance indicators, and meaningful threat mitigation contingencies. When we don't build into our strategic planning process an appraisal of what the threats might be and how to mitigate, how to reduce, how to prevent, or how to deal with those threats. And when we don't build KPIs or OKRs, however you want to put that, when we don't build in observable, measurable indicators of progress that keep us on track and prevent us from drifting from our purpose, we're in trouble. And that's a big blind spot in strategic focus in the conventional approach to strategy that you and I have observed over and over again.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Doctor. That is huge. And we see so many times where projects have scope creep, they become more expensive and they get executed in a slower fashion. But even businesses themselves become stagnant or drift from the course because of this blind spots. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Let's turn our attention now to the contrast between that and an exit-minded focus.
The reason that we're talking about this is not because we want you to be fixated on exiting your business, but because we have recognized through years and years of running our own businesses and working with business owners that this conventional focus is not enough to prepare a durable, agile business, but it's definitely not going to get you to the exit that you're looking for. And exiting takes years and years and years to prepare for because it's traditionally shifting a business from an operation to an investment. But if you're running your business as an investment, you're going to, like I said before, be more durable and agile, but you're also going to be making more money while you do it. You'll be building value into your business instead of just growing the distribution of your product and service. That's why we want to focus on this. And we want to focus on this not just for business owners that are looking to exit, but for all business owners. We believe that this is a universally valuable transition in strategic planning mindsets.
I agree. I really want to underline a gem that just came out of your mouth. That's so important. I know it's so unusual, but no, you tend to string gems one after the other. But this one I really want to underline, which is that this is a shift in mindset and in strategy from treating your business as an operation to treating your business as an investment. That's huge.
Yeah, I think that's something that people don't recognize enough, especially in our business, in the work that we do. Our peers and ourselves, we're not really bringing that into the consciousness as much as I would like to see us do it.
Yeah, good. Shall I keep going?
Please do, my friend.
Okay. The key to an exit-minded focus is having an accurate, realistic understanding of your business value, which is usually really different from the amount of value that most business owners think their business is worth. Building or having business value, computing business value is completely 100% determined by future risk. And with an exit-minded focus, you start with a threat analysis, and you use this to determine how to proceed strategically. And the thing that I want to add about that is we're not trying to give you a subliminal message that says that you should live in fear. You absolutely should not live in fear, because if you live in fear rather than abundance, you'll stumble all over yourself and there'll be all kinds of undermining and self-sabotage that occurs. We're talking about having eyes wide open, not being in a state of fear.
This brings me back to that idea that knowledge is power, right? Many of the business owners that we've talked to in our decades of doing this don't want to know the business value because they're not ready to sell. And they have an idea, and that's good enough. And for me, the actual value of your business is almost a consequence of doing things right versus the number that you drive for. But this point that you made, Dr. Gruder, about business value being 100% determined by risk is super important, because what we're saying there is that the only way to understand what your business is worth is to understand what can threaten the continued prosperity of the business and what can stand in the way of future growth. If you understand risk in your business, then you can start to identify what you need to work with as you're developing a strategy. What is going to stand in the way of your long-term strategy? And so getting the value, getting the number is great, because you've got this target that you can drive towards. You can use business value to determine where you fit within your ecosystem of peers. You can determine the gap between where you want to be when you exit and where you are today. You can make moves to address value-related things, but that's a number. What's really important is understanding those risk elements, because that's where the magic happens, both in strategic planning and in building a great value. And by always looking at those things and by regularly looking at your business value, it's a lot easier to determine hard and fast numbers for return on investment for your projects. It's a lot easier to prioritize what projects actually matter and what projects are shiny things. This concept of value and risk is great as a filter for how you're going to develop strategy.
Beautifully said. With that, again, the mindset we were talking about a moment ago, which is about having the courage to see, not living in fear about risks. It's important for you to ask yourself, where is your business weak? What must you strengthen in order to mitigate those weaknesses? What guardrails does your team need to install in order to effectively mitigate those risks? And how can you and your team change behaviors that in turn change the state of your business instead of only focusing on the business plan itself? How do you actually do behavior change in the business that is mindful of the risks and mitigates the risks, but in ways that actually focus on helping you flourish and helping you improve and boost your business's value?
I love that. That's so huge. This thing that you're talking about, this change in behaviors that accompanies the change in the business, this is another piece to this type of strategic planning that frequently gets missed when you're talking about objective-oriented conventional strategic planning, right? All we want there is to see a change in the objective measures of the company, but those objective measures will not be changed in a durable way if the behaviors aren't changing commensurate. This idea of what are my weaknesses, what are my gaps, and what behaviors are involved in those threats, as well as the operational factors, the resources, the skilled professionals, the equipment, All of those things are important too, but taking the people into account. This is a huge part of this exit-minded strategy. And once you've got those things, once you understand where your weaknesses are, once you put up guardrails and you've talked about the changes in operation as well as in behaviors, then you can start to build a new vision that is empowering. It's going to be similar to the vision that you would have built in the conventional plan, but it's going to be so much more robust because it's a big picture vision. It's going to be inspiring of people, and it's going to be built with a why that almost states its own how. And this is how you charge people. And then once you have all of your measurements, all of your understanding of risk and value, and you have this overarching inspiring vision, now you can say, what's the gap between where we are today and where we are going? And now you can start to holistically, with risk in mind, start to build a plan to fill that gap that is durable, that is agile, that is building out risk mitigation while it's building up the future of business.
Where do I sign up?
Exactly. It's so much fun.
I know, right? To tie a bow around this contrast that we're trying to illuminate between exit-minded focus and conventional strategic focus. An exit-minded focus looks at your business as an investment vehicle in contrast to a conventional strategic focus, which looks at your business as a day-to-day operation, how to get through each day.
I don't think you can say that enough, Doctor. That is so important. It's a different way of thinking. And when you're thinking in a different way, you're acting in a different way. One thing that I would like to stress one more time in this episode is this is not about exiting your business. It will get you there better, but that's not what it's about. It's about thinking in a different way to build a better business.
Exactly. That just also can't be emphasized enough, for sure. Let's shift our attention now that you've got a sense of the contrast between an exit-minded focus and a conventional strategic focus. Let's look at the three big challenges that we want to focus on in this episode, at least, about shifting into an exit-minded focus. And the first of those is recognizing this shift is needed in the first place. Not knowing that this kind of shift into an exit-minded focus is needed, or denying that it's needed, or making excuses for delaying making this shift doesn't bode well for your business's thriving, regardless of whether you're focusing on an exit right now.
And so true. And I think that some of you out there listening might be able to say, hey, I don't have to make the shift because I've never been strategically planning. So I could just start with a clean slate, which is great. But you're still making a shift from not planning strategically to getting that strategy in. You're just skipping, a couple steps. You're skipping ahead to the front of the line and doing it really well right away. I think that for me, the second big challenge, and this one's huge, is understanding how to identify and interpret your risk profile. And this is not something that I've seen taught in business schools. It definitely wasn't something that I learned when I got my MBA, but it's critical. It's like the key to unlocking this whole strategic planning door. We'll talk about some steps on this in the future, but you need to be open and willing to, one, figure out what your risk profile is, and then interpret what that means for your business. And having those skills are going to put you in a completely different place against your competitors because you're looking at the competitive landscape in a totally different way.
Yes, indeed. The first big challenge is recognizing that the shift into an exit focus is needed. The second is understanding how to identify your risk profile. And we should definitely devote an episode, at least one, to that. The third big challenge is inertia, which is the old status quo addiction that so commonly sets in. Well, this is the way we've always done it, and it's worked well enough, so let's not monkey with the process. It's good enough. Just keep going. And that's a challenge that really needs to be overcome at the people level, at the motivation level, and at the level of addressing and mitigating fear that people have around change. This big challenge is about getting your entire organization, your entire company to move away from what's been comfortable into this new kind of mindset, out of that old mindset of worked well enough for us and it's home, to what about even better? What do we stand to gain by really supercharging our strategy in an exit-minded kind of way?
I love that. This is another big deal. Inertia is real. And we've seen so many great companies kill themselves because of this inertia. And, I think about this mantra that Toyota has, which is the moment you're content, you've started to fail. I just love it. It's so concise, but it's so powerful. And it's true of any business. When you let that inertia set in, when you stop driving forward, you're rolling backwards immediately. Now that we've got these three issues identified, let's start talking about how to overcome them, how to achieve success in this type of, I know it's crazy, right?
What a concept.
We're going to give some good news. And so starting with the very first one, recognizing that the shift is needed, I think that the way to start understanding and informing your team that the shift is needed is to get informed yourself. We recommend starting this by having a sound M&A firm who does valuations within an active marketplace that they serve to run a valuation on your business.
Like Blue Sky Business Resources?
We could do that. We're not the only ones. We'd love to see you in our firm. The point is, get that information. And the experts that do these valuations should be the first step to identifying your risk profile. The better the firm is, the more robust their assessment of your risk profile is. Once you do this, the next big step to this understanding, gaining this understanding, is take a deep breath, get over the shock of this is not at all what I expected. My buddies at the country club all said it's a 12 multiple and they're saying it's 3.5 because I'm manufacturing. What do I do? Reality will set in. And this is not the end of the world. This is the beginning of the world. Having your eyes open in some cases hurts the first time, but now you know where you're at and you can start driving towards where you want to be. Once you've dealt with the emotion of having your very first business valuation, maybe you love it, maybe you hate it. It's just a moment in time for you to work from. Once you've done that and you've confronted your own emotions and your own fears within this process, start to share that information with your internal team as well as your advisory team. And if you need to, start talking to some experts. Start talking to people who can help you interpret this and help it become meaningful for your business. This process is also going to help business owners kind of decouple their identity from the identity of the business. And this can help to start a business owner in gaining that understanding that's so critical that they are not their business. You are a key element of the business. You are the parent of the business, but you are not, and you never will be the business. Starting this process is also often very, very powerful in helping you decouple emotionally from the business in a meaningful way.
Indeed. Yes, well said. And even though we'll do a deeper dive in a future episode, we'll give you a little bit of primer, an overview primer now on how to identify your business's risk profile. And some of that is going to be revealed through the business valuation process. Important parts of it will be. And in addition, you're going to want to get industry-specific profiling on the industry your business is in. And the best source that we know about for gathering that information is the data from the Risk Management Association, the data that the Risk Management Association maintains about that. Get industry-specific profiling in your industry. Then also don't overlook the wisdom inside your business. Ask the right people in your own business, your frontline and middle management folks. They're the ones who know where the problems are because they're dealing with them breath in and breath out, day in and day out. at the boots on the ground level in ways that you probably aren't if you're a business owner or a business executive. Tap into that source of internal wisdom inside your own business. Those factors really are a solid triad for identifying your risk profile.
Yeah, you've built a pretty stable stool there, my friend. I just wanted to go back to that RMA data, the Risk Management Association data. If this is a new term or a new concept to you, there are several places that you should be able to go. Oftentimes, you'll be able to access RMA data at your public library. We don't think about going to libraries very often anymore, but they're a great resource for business owners to access major databases that would cost you a prohibitive amount to subscribe to yourself. You can also go to your trade association. Most trade associations will have access to RMA data, whether they give that directly to you as a member benefit, or you can talk to the board of the trade association and they can pull a report for you. Many business trade associations will have access to that data. And then lastly, your reputable, trusted valuation advisor should also have access to a database that can pull RMA data. There are a lot of different places you can go to find this. There's one other one. Bankers use RMA data all the time. This is the data set that bankers use to determine risk and establish their principal investment portfolio as well as their interest rates. You can also ask your banker. I just want to make sure that you know that you've got a lot of avenues that you can pursue to try to get this data. So don't say, I've never heard of Risk Management Association. I'm not going to pay for access to this to get the risk profile. It's not worth it. Don't pay for it. Talk to one of your resources, find a resource that can get it for you and get these reports pulled.
I'm so glad you added all of that. Really crucial.
Yeah, it is. I know that when I was running businesses, when I was a startup guy, it took me a long time to find this stuff. But once I found my library and recognized all of the resources that there are there, spent a lot of time at the library again. It was like being a kid. Mm-hmm. But now let's move on to this number 3. And this one's a big one. Doctor, if you wouldn't mind just sharing this one with me, let's start talking about this overcoming inertia business.
Sure. The first key dimension in overcoming inertia is dealing with mindset blocks. And I already earlier in this episode touched on one, which is the status quo addicts, the people who are afraid of change because they like being in a habit that's well established, but they don't have to think about too much.
Now, doctor, you run a 12-step program for these people, right?
Status Quo Addicts Anonymous, right. SQAA. And then we have mindset blocks that dreamers tend to have, the ones who are the visionaries. They tend to have difficulty facing that gap that we've talked about between the actual value of the business and the value they hope the business currently has. And I have rarely met a business owner who doesn't have that dreaming gap. It's really common. And I say that because if that's true of you, just know that it's built in. There's nothing wrong with you that you've got that gap. The only thing that would be wrong is if you don't face it and mitigate it. But it's not a problem that you have it. You came by it honestly.
I will tell you, this is such great timing because last week, I've been doing business valuations for over a decade. I have done hundreds of them. Last week, I met my first business owner that had a impression or a gut instinct of value that was lower than what his business was truly worth. It was the most fun valuation I ever did because he's like, really? That's amazing.
Wow, you found the needle in the haystack.
I found him.
Yay.
Yeah, I pinched myself.
For sure. And then the last mindset block that we're going to touch on in this episode is kind of a variation on status quo addiction. It's about plausible deniability, that attitude that says, if we're already successful, if we're already profitable, if we're already doing well, if we're able to keep growing and keep scaling, then why do we have to change? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if you're not in an exit-minded focus, you don't really know that it is actually broken and not in an exit-minded focus, but you're still in profitability, becomes a seducer to stay asleep rather than a motivator to go a next step.
Absolutely. Do not go the Kodak route. And, it's so heartbreaking to me, but I don't think a lot of people realize this, but the average life expectancy for a business in today's rapidly changing and highly technological world is 40 years. The average business that starts these days will not get to be as old as I am. My brain literally melted when I heard the statistic, but it's because of the Kodaks of the world. It's because of this inertia where they've been so successful and owned so much market share for so long that they quit looking for the next innovation. They quit looking at the next innovation. I mean, let's be honest. Digital photography was born in a Kodak research facility.
How is that for irony?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then you've got Fujifilm on the other side that diversified into chemicals, that diversified into films for technological products. They diversified into cosmetic applications because rather than saying we're number 2, the second biggest film producer in the world, they said we are a firm that is based on this film-centric chemistry knowledge. And the world is going away from film. What can we translate that knowledge into? And they're doing great. Just keeping that in mind. And this leads me to the big piece of success that starts this whole thing, which is up-leveling your why. And we kind of touched on this earlier, right? Having a more robust business that is overarching and inspiring and allows for the evolution of your business. It allows you to be opportunistic when markets change, when technology changes. You're not stuck in that mindset of we are Kodak, we're the greatest film maker in the world. Go to Fuji. We are a chemical and film minded company filled with experts that satisfy needs. And that's the overarching why that you want to have. It's focused on your core skills. It's focused on your core passion, but it's broad enough to allow the company to adjust and grow. And that's where this momentum starts. Because if you have that inspiring why that allows you to change, you're always looking for fulfilling that why in a new way. And this is going to motivate your whole team to never be complacent, to never find that comfort level that causes your business to start to decline.
I want to underline again something that you said that's so important. The absolute biggest risk to a business's viability, it's success.
Indeed.
And that seems counterintuitive, but the thing that you're really stressing that I want to underline is that when businesses become successful, the tendency, the inertia tendency, is to rest on their laurels rather than to keep asking, okay, now that we become a market leader in our industry, what's coming next? How do we retain being a market leader in the industry? Because if we rest on our laurels, it's only a matter of time, and probably not a long period of time, before we're no longer the industry market leader because some innovator came and swooped in and took our market leader position from us.
Exactly. Or the process and the climate and the cost viability changes.
Yes.
I think about the Ball Corporation, which is one of those companies that has lived well over 100 years. Everybody recognizes them for the beautiful little canning jars. They don't even make those anymore. They sold off their division because glass got prohibitive to manufacture. They moved into metals. They actually bought an aerospace company. They could have access to people with the metal knowledge that they needed to continue to evolve because they are a container company, not a beautiful glass jar company. And they're still getting royalties because whoever bought that company and is making the glass products still puts the Ball name on it. They're getting royalties for those glass jars, but they're not making them anymore because the markets changed and glass became prohibitively expensive.
Outstanding example.
That's what we want to be able to do. And then once you've got that up-leveled why, and as we talked about, a great why also starts to answer the how question, right? But once you've got that, then you can start doing those gaps analyses. What's the difference between our overarching why and how we're operating today? What's the difference between the value that we're looking for and where we are today? What's the difference between full risk mitigation and our risk profile today? Some really simple examples that can start to put a fine point on what we're talking about when we're identifying these gaps. What's your day-to-day process? Is it in writing, and is everybody following the same routine? Or do you have some knowledge experts that have their way of doing it, and they can get results that are different than everybody else's results because they're doing it their way and everybody else is doing it a different way? Are those processes in writing? Are they consistently utilized? And most importantly, are they being regularly refreshed?
And are they clear enough so that someone new who comes in can learn them quickly and implement them effectively?
Yes. And that's going right to the next point I was going to say, which is transferability of knowledge and relationships. Not only should a new team member be able to come in and get up to speed on the processes very quickly so that there's a short time of productivity loss in their stations, but they should also be able to jump into the relationships, the outside stakeholders, the clients, the suppliers, everybody that they have relationships with. That should be transferable. And this is important, one, because it gives everybody a lot more responsibility and ownership of the success of the company. But it's also important because you don't want an employee that can hold your entire business hostage because they're the only one that has key knowledge, or they're the only one that holds key relationships. And if they leave, the business is going to be crippled. And I see this time and time and time again, where there is a key salesperson who has all the relationships. And if that salesperson goes to a competitor, all your clients go with them. Or you've got that expert, the technical expert in the company that is the only one that knows how to truly do quality assurance, or the only one that knows how to design for specific technical requirements for their clients. Cannot have that. That's a massive gap that needs to be closed as quickly as possible. Also, it's never too soon for the owner to start emotionally separating themselves from the identity of the business, and also even start to think about, as they're pulling away from day-to-day operations and becoming the visionary leader instead of the operational leader, they can also start envisioning, what am I going to do next? Because at some point, I'm going to exit this business. Hope you exit the building a couple times a week, but you'll be exiting the business. And what does life look like in my next chapter? This is an important consideration, and it's something to start dreaming about today, because just like starting the business didn't happen overnight, transitioning into your next stage of life will not happen overnight either. There are a lot of different elements to closing these gaps all throughout your business once you understand your risk profile.
And to underline that, we've covered this in a prior episode, at least one. If you don't have a really compelling next chapter as a business owner after you exit the business, you will inadvertently undermine the exit process. You will undermine the business's ability to be sold effectively, or for whatever your exit plan happens to be.
Yeah. And even when you do exit, you'll have remorse because you won't have been able to let go yet.
Yes, that's seller's remorse in contrast to buyer's remorse. Yep. And to tie a bow around the roadmap for an exit-oriented plan is proper implementation, of course. And we don't have to belabor this point, but we did want to at least touch on it briefly, which is that it's not enough to have your implementation teams focused on getting stuff done from an exit readiness development mindset. It's crucial that your executive leadership and your advisory teams are clearly and explicitly supporting that and reminding your implementers about that, because the tendency when you're boots on the ground and you're implementing things on a day-to-day basis is to lose track of the higher vision, to lose track of the intentions behind the things you're doing in the way of implementation.
We are not saying this ever becomes easy, because what we're asking you to do is create tension within your business through the strategic plan, right? You want to be operating as efficiently as possible in your product delivery and production, whether that's a product or a service, while you're changing everything. You've got to be able to do both. You've got to be able to run your business the way that it's designed in the most efficient way possible while changing the long-term design of the business to do something different. This is very challenging, and it's going to take the entire team, and it's actually going to take implementation that is, I like to quote the term from a professor of mine, ambidextrous. You have your exploitative portion, which is about optimizing what you're doing today, and that has to run in an entirely different way than your explorative portion, which is designing what you're going to do next.
And the importance of this is that what you just said, Jason, is a powerful way to illuminate the notion of working on your business, not in your business, if you're an executive or an owner. This is a concrete example of what working on your business means.
Absolutely. And we said we weren't going to belabor the point. Stop it there, but we'll talk about these concepts in other episodes for sure. With that said, let's go to the takeaways. Let's talk about what each of us brings away from this episode and hope that you bring away from the episode. If you don't mind, Doctor, I'll start off. My big takeaway from this is that you don't have to throw away conventional strategic planning. We're not saying that all these great minds that developed the foundations of strategic planning over years and years and years of experience and research are wrong. There's value to the conventional approach to strategic planning. We just want to modify it. We want to add to that conventional approach by starting with risk and working through at all times, working through your strategic planning process with that risk and with that gap analysis in mind, that the plan you come up with is more robust, it's more agile, and it's going to be more prone to success with a minimum of drift.
Absolutely. And just to emphasize this one last time as a takeaway, it's never too soon to shift into an exit readiness focus, even if you don't plan to exit or don't yet know when you'll exit.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. And if you think you're going to exit in the next 5 years, you're already behind on a lot of things that need to be done. But if you don't have an exit on your horizon, you're in a perfect place to start doing this. It will help you maximize your benefit as the owner of the business every day you own it. And it will put you in that top quartile or top decile of the market when you're looking to exit. With all of that said, on behalf of Dr. Gruder and myself, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us in this episode. I hope you had as much fun as we did. We thank you for coming. Please click the subscribe button so that you get the updates as we churn out new episodes. We've got some great interviews coming up. Please click that subscribe button, stay notified. We'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, topic ideas. Please feel free at all times to use that comment section. You can help us shape the future of boosting business value. And then visit the Blue Sky website as well. There's a lot of great information and some really cool tools at blueskyadvisors.net. And if you go blueskyadvisors.net/podcast, that'll take you to all the episodes. We've got full transcripts, we've got video, we've got audio. Or you can go blueskyadvisors.net and click the free assessments. We've got over a dozen micro assessments, really quick to fill out, but give you some meaningful and powerful insights to your operational infrastructure. With that said, thank you so much and have a great day.
That's all for this episode of Boosting Business Value. May your new learning result in the smoothest and most profitable exit strategy for your business. With the right knowledge and guidance, the sky's the limit to what you can do. Do not miss an episode by subscribing to the show. And if you want to learn where your business currently stands, we also have free key opportunity assessments. Find all of them at blueskyadvisors.net/podcast. Thank you for joining us. See you on the next one.